All right, and joining me on the show now, folks, is the infallible. That's my nickname, but we'll use it for him today. Ant Evans is here. So, former UFC talent relations PR. You worked alongside Scott D'Amore in TNA. You worked on the UFC Hall of Fame. You worked on Fight Pass, which is the fight gods' gift to MMA marks like myself. And just to catch the audience up, if they aren't familiar, I had a chance to talk with you before on Toonie Talk, but I didn't get to pick your brain quite all the way as well as I wanted to. So, Ant, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you.
No problem, man. It's funny that I've been kind of like the longer it is since I worked at the UFC, the more I get promoted. I've been called, senior vice president. I'm like, really? Like my bank account never reflected that. Talent relations. I didn't actually do talent relations. There isn't really a talent. Well, there is now a talent relations department run by my friend Reed Harris, but I didn't actually do that, but the rest was accurate. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's what I see people throw out there. We're just
sometimes I just keep my mouth shut. I'm like, I did do that.
It's better get the rub that way. So tell me a little bit. I know you worked in martial arts and like in that space and pro wrestling and all that, but tell me about like, do you have a martial arts background of any sort, and like what compelled you to start like working in that field?
Yeah, so I do. I grew up during the 80s, so Karate Kid, Ninja Turtles were really big, and I did every type of martial art you could possibly. That was the days when like every street corner had a karate dojo or a Wing Chun Kung Fu or a Jiu-Jitsu, or I also boxed a little bit in my later teens, early 20s. But I always wanted to, be involved in combat sports. At the time, that simply meant boxing, because that's really all there was. Yeah. So I worked in boxing as a reporter. Gradually, that morphed into doing PR. I was lucky enough to work with a guy called Ricky Hatton, who was a huge boxing star in Great Britain. Mm-hmm. Crossed over to being an international star in the US. And remember getting UFC. I actually got UFC 2 first on VHS. It was on a local garage or garage, as a lot of people now say in America. A garage, yeah. I've got this weird, horrible because I've lived in Las Vegas for like 12 years. I've got this weird, horrible mix of English and American English. It's like terrible. I never know what I'm going to sound like before I open my mouth. But I just loved it, and I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. And UFC came to the UK in 2002 for what did a show, and they're supposed to come back. And I kind of like shoehorned my way in there, helping out here and there, because I had a website that they sponsored to give them coverage, and their PR people were shite. So I helped them out a little bit. And after the show, I spoke to Dana White, and he was like, "Hey, man, thanks for everything. You've got a job. Next time we come back to the UK, you've got a job." Wow. Well, it's a good job I didn't quit my day job, because they didn't come back for 5 years. Yeah, it's a long time. And Dana had forgotten me in that conversation, but I was, I had a couple of friends who worked at the UFC who, put in good words. So I met Marshall Zalesnik, who was the head president of the UK division of the UFC, and he met me, and I went down and talked about, well, what you've got to do is this, and just like we did with Ricky Hatton, you've got to do that with Michael Bisping, you're going to do this and that and that. And I walked out thinking, chef, nailed that interview. But Marshall turned around to his colleagues and said, I don't understand one thing that man just said, but he seems really confident, so we should probably hire him.
Hey, that's all you need sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I worked in, that was beginning of my journey of the UFC.
That's incredible. And like, so what's Ricky Hatton like? Like, legend.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Ricky was awesome to work with. Apart from like, he would try and change the times of like open workouts on the day. I'm like, Ricky, we've got people on the train right now from London to come to Manchester, and who got up at 5 a.m. and nobody likes getting up at 5 a.m. Ricky, you don't. So, no, we're going to do it at 12 o'clock when we said. So, these gentlemen don't have to stay here all day.
And what was that attributed to? Was he a bit of a wild guy, or he just kind of, no, I'm going to do things on my own time?
No, the thing is, this is the talent relations part of PR. PR is doing good PR. There's a lot of dickheads on Twitter with every subject, but there's a particularly stupid dickhead class who like sneer at public relations and what it is. And public relations is with the UFC, you essentially have 5 bosses. Obviously, you got the boss of the UFC as your boss. That's who's paying you wages. That's who your loyalty's to. But you've also got a boss who is the fighter. Mm-hmm. You've got to take in consideration they have wives, girlfriends who have birthdays. They have bar mitzvahs to attend. They have weddings to attend. Right. They have soccer games and little league games to attend. They have the birth of children, going on. They've got a life. Yep. They're not just, some resource that you can pull on because they're under contract with the UFC. And also, you've got talent like Nick Diaz, who absolutely hates interviews. He hates it.
Yeah.
And he's not trying to be rude. He just doesn't like it.
I understand that too. I actually get that aspect of it. My grandfather was a boxing coach. My mom actually was a kickboxer, and so I understand that aspect of it. Like he just doesn't like it, and it's not that he's trying to be rude. It's not even. Mm-hmm. It's just something it's an aspect of the fighting that he just doesn't even see a purpose in. As far as I don't know, and it's crazy.
Yeah, because he's super confident in one or two aspects. I mean, to be stripped to the waist in front of 20,000 people and fighting another guy, you're confident. But it doesn't mean you're confident in everything. He doesn't like it. It gives him, it makes him feel a certain type of way that he doesn't enjoy feeling. So, you've got to work with him and say, okay, Nick, here's everybody who wants to talk to you. Yeah. There's a list of 12. You take away 7.
Yeah.
It's like, he goes, really? I was like, yeah, just here's a pen, just cross them out, and we'll just do those fights. Yeah, he did. And then, he showed up on time and was a mensch to work with, as my friend Errol Hawani says.
Yeah.
But, the other one is you also got a boss. You've got the media. You got your one-on-ones, like, mention Ariel. Like, Ariel wanted a certain type of story, wanted a certain type of interaction. My friend Kevin Ioli, and I mentioned that my friends, they became friends over time, and it's, they all want the best scoop. They all want to speak to the top fighters in the most newsworthy time. Well, you can't do that for everybody. Mm-hmm. So you've got to manage that. So you essentially got 3 bosses. You've got the fighters, the media, and you've got obviously the people who actually employ you are all your bosses, and you've got to juggle that. That's what public relations, and you've got to know what a good story is.
Moving on from that, how did you get into pro wrestling then? Like, where did that shift happen where you're like working in TNA or you're involved in the pro wrestling world? Was that simultaneous, or did that come after? Or
so after I left the UFC, the pandemic happened, and I was basically looking for something to occupy my time when I was pretending I was a school teacher to my kid, because schools were shut down. Everyone remembers that horrible, freaky time we were all in. But
it was weird. Yeah.
I was so bored, like a lot of people. A friend of mine, Jamie Pollock, who worked at the UFC for a long time, he had just been made essentially like the number 1 or 2 executive at Anthem Sports and Entertainment, which owned TNA. We'll call it TNA. It was Impact at the time, but TNA. Yeah. And a mutual friend of ours said, hey, do you know Jamie's doing that pro wrestling shit? I was like, would you help him out? I was like, yeah. He goes, shit, he'd love to hear that you're available. So Jamie called me straight away, and I was like, I need help. Would you do this? I love fucking pro wrestling. And I was a big fan of TNA, during the Monty Brown, Kurt Angle era.
Man. Monty Brown is he's one of the biggest misses, I think, in pro wrestling history.
Yeah.
As far as star quality and that. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was a big fan, and I really got on with Scott D'Amore. Actually, speaking to Scott just before I got on with you,
brilliant.
And that was a fun run. But ultimately, with the thing is, the people who run that company, and this is why Scott D'Amore's not there anymore, is they don't really want success. Not really. They don't really want to make money. They want to be right. They want to be right. And what they want to be right about is the way they ran things 5-6 years ago.
So they don't. So they look at the way they ran things 5-6 years ago before D'Amore came in and really got everything. I would call TNA white hot, if you will. I mean,
it was white hot. 8 months ago, it was white hot again, and they got rid of the architects of that. In fact, they got rid of all the architects of that.
Well, now I would say it is heating up again because of all the crossover stuff they're doing with NXT and WWE.
Yeah, and who did that? Who did that relation? Who caused that relationship to happen? Scott D'Amore.
That's boom. Here, I'm going to drop an arrow. This is what I mean. So I've always sort of speculated that because Scott D'Amore's like beloved. People, by all accounts, people love this guy.
Yeah, no one's got a bad Scott D'Amore story.
And so you had said on Toonie Talk, when I spoke with you the first time, I think I'd asked you about TNA and how things are heating up. And I think you had said that in your opinion, in like 18 months, TNA probably won't even be around. It'll probably be absorbed or something. Now, seeing with what they're doing on WWE and NXT, and I think some of that is like Tony Khan calling Triple H and Shawn Michaels bald asshole. I think some of that is Shawn
Michaels. I missed that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm bald. I mean, what's
Yeah, well, Tony Khan tweeted out a while ago. Did
he say that really bold?
He really did, man. I could pull it up.
I take offense to that. I believe you. It's just at what point does he stop embarrassing himself?
I know, man. And
the thing is, you know what? I bet Triple H and Shawn Michaels have got hair just like Tony Khan's, just not on their heads.
Yeah, exactly. Tony Khan. Oh no, everything's great over here. It's Wonderland. Everything's so safe and magical. It's great. But yeah,
it's more like Neverland with Michael Jackson. It's like, yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, playing with all the old toys he couldn't as a kid. He's doing stat work.
I didn't mean it to be that creepy, but sure.
I'll take it there, whatever. But listen, so he made a bald assholes comment, and I think some of them working with TNA is like, Shawn Michaels going, "Oh, really, bald assholes?" We'll work with you. We'll show you how to do Forbidden Door or whatever. Yeah. But now, has your opinion changed? Do you think TNA's gone in 18 months, or do you see it as
just the people are in charge? Like, Ariel Sherner, fucking Nero, all those guys are dumb as a box of rocks.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, they're cornflakes for brains. If their brains were gunpowder, they couldn't blow a bogey from the left nostril. I mean, I don't know if I'm getting my point across. I think they're stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's got. I mean, that and Invicta, I think, have got about 18 months, 2 years. I mean, Invicta right now. I mean, they did this big. I'll take some credit for it because I was like, hey, Invicta, why haven't you done a show in 9 months? You've never gone more than 3 months without a show. In a decade, why have you gone 9 months without a show? And that's because Len Asper, who owns Anthem, was like, I'm not putting any more money into this. I'm like, well, why did you acquire it if you're not going to invest in it? Invicta's a great brand. Shannon Knapp, poured her heart and soul into this and created something that's got real value.
Yep.
You acquire it to do what with it? Nothing. Not even put it on your own TV station that you're on Access TV. You don't want it on there. I was like, all right, why acquire it? So there's other things Shannon could have done with it. So I kind of brought attention to that, and this deal obviously would have been in the works anyway, but the deal that Invicta FC MMA has got with CBS Sports, it's a time buy. They're buying their way on there.
Right. Okay.
That's not a TV. That's not a you and I could, throw a bunch of money and get this conversation on TV if we really wanted to. If we, if we just money marks, sure. Man, that's not securing the future. And look. They smoke and mirrored it really, really well last year, but TNA stopped making wrestling last year for a whole chunk of time in Q4 last year. Mm-hmm. They basically went dark. No one really noticed it because they were so excited about the TNA relaunch and all that. Right. But they went dark, They went dark to save money. They
and there was there was like a month there of like recap shows. I remember I watched it, so I was watching it. You know, definitely.
Yeah, you know, they didn't. The only reason they did that is so they did not pay as much money out each month. They're reasonably close to being there again. I mean, I'm sure they're getting more. They're in a better position with the NXT stuff, and there's more buzz about it. But I don't know. So I still think it doesn't have a lot. Just the people at Anthem are so fucking stupid.
And so do you think to them they're like patting themselves on the back over, oh, D'Amore's gone, but look what we're doing with WWE right now? Do you think that they're looking at that as some sort of victory or? Yeah,
I mean, there's some of the people in particular. So I mean, look, I love a couple of people there. I'm really can't say enough good things about Josh Matthews is awesome.
Love him.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. Ross Foreman's fantastic. We should be listening to these guys who've been there. I mean, Ross was on the WCW booking committee when WCW was kicking the shit out of WWE.
Yeah,
like, listen to him.
Yeah,
he's been in the business now for 40 years.
Yeah, Bischoff. He gets so much.
Doesn't
even make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, they're probably like, "Oh, we're doing all right." But it's the fucking thing. Is like they did a massive pay-per-view, really good pay-per-view in January, Rebellion, and then they just cut the balls off all that goodwill by getting rid of Scott the way they did, and in such a cowardly way, like basically pretending it was mutual, and then Scott was like, "No." And just such a cowardly way. It was handled exactly the way it's always going to be handled back with these Nimrods.
Yeah, and you had brought up before how when Tony Khan and AEW did their little TNA crossover there, and you had brought up on the show on where I interviewed you before, you were saying how Scott D'Amore sort of couldn't or didn't feel the need to take shots back at Tony Khan when Tony Khan
it was look. So to the credits for the Anthem people I was just mentioning were like, hey, we're getting a little brothered a bit here, but on the other hand, we had Kenny Omega on our TV show doing fucking the best buy rates the company had done since Hulk Hogan days.
That's for real? Kenny did that?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who clip articles and they'll go, "Oh, look, Kenny did some of the worst ratings for TNA," and I was like, "I don't know about that, man. It's Kenny."
Nonsense.
Yeah.
The first time he was on, including YouTube clips and stuff like that, over 1 million people watched TNA. Whereas the average for some weeks was like 100,000. So that's absolute nonsense. It just
And so was it like the higher up Anthem folk being like, "Now Scott, don't say nothing about Mr. Khan," or was
I think that came from fucking Scott's probably going to watch this and give me a call and start bollocking me, but he isn't my boss anymore. So
hey Scott, come on the show and clear up the air. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Wrestle Times.
Yeah, exactly. But Scotty, I wrote like a page of zingers. What we could do, and these were softballs. They were like making fun of like Tony Khan's soccer club had just lost. It was, they weren't like, "Oh, that's personal and no cutting." It's like, no, they were like just little flicks. He was like, "No, we can't use them." I was like, "What?" I was like, we got, even like Tony Schiavone, making, asking him, because he's a barista, there was like a Frappuccino reference, Frappuccino for brains or something. Yeah. Like it's just schoolyard stuff, like not nasty, not ill-intended. And it was like, no, we can't.
Yeah.
It was like, seriously? But we have Tony making fun of our product on our product? I was like, all right, okay.
Speaking of Tony Khan and that, they announced, everybody's speculating about their whole TV deal and all of that. And of course, everybody's TV business execs on Twitter and all that. But,
exactly.
but when it boils down to things, I look at things like when you boil it down, right? Like they put their PLEs, pay-per-views, whatever you want to call it. They did some deal with Triller. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Triller. You probably are. You're smarter in this field than I am. They're not doing too hot, right? Like, what is that about? How do you view that? Is that a good move on Tony Khan's behalf, like taking the pay-per-views and that back catalog and putting it over on Triller? Because I think, didn't they stop doing fights and stuff like that too? I'm pretty sure they're in the red big time right now. A bunch of celebrities pulled out of that. So, yeah, do you have any insight on that?
Well, I do some, yeah. So only some I can share. But so, good friend of mine, actually, one of my old bosses at the UFC, Eric Winter, is I believe taking over Triller, and he'll write the ship. Yeah, I mean, Triller's got really good technology. You know, I mean, I much prefer. I always feel pretty confident when I pay my money on a pay-per-view on Triller that it's, you know, Fight TV, as I always call it. You know, that was the old brand of it. But it's not going to fall on its arse, you know. You can't say that about Bleacher Report, wherever the heck that platform was on. It was always falling down. You can't even say that about ESPN Plus, which is absolute dog shit of a platform. Terrible, inexcusably bad. Like, I would say like once out of every 2 pay-per-views, you know, on UFC, I personally experience a problem. I mean, you go online, and obviously Twitter's not real life, but you see so many people saying the same things, like it's choppy, the audio is 30 seconds behind the action, or it's just crap. It's absolute shite. Fight is not that. Fight, I've never had a problem. I've never seen people have a major problem with Triller. So, yeah, I mean, I think actually that's a smart move going there. I mean, what he should do is, and I don't also believe you can get AEW pay-per-views via YouTube now as well. I mean, that's been a thing for a little while. I think
that is a thing. And is that a good move? Like, I know you talked with Eric Bischoff about how AEW can improve their YouTube game, and you're saying, look, dude, they're leaving money on the table, you know? I think one of the reasons TNA sort of turned around, and this might just be me sort of making this up, but I don't know, man, their YouTube presence got so good in TNA where it was like I'm sitting there watching old pay-per-views on the off day where there's no wrestling or anything. So, and I feel like that really helped turn like the TNA around as well.
Well, thank you, because I was behind that. So I appreciate you fluffing me there.
There you go. And so AEW with their YouTube, I know you've pitched some ideas as far as like, hey, they could be doing like this and this to make their YouTube presence better. Tell me about some of your ideas in that regard.
Yeah, so like with AEW, so look, AEW for good and bad, it is a hardcore product for you know. I'll use Tony Khan's exact words. He makes wrestling for the wrestling sickos. Okay. I'll leave that for other people to see if that's you know, like Eric Bischoff certainly has very pronounced opinions about that not being how you get a mainstream audience.
Me too.
On television, you know. But what it does, if you've got that hardcore, and I'll just look at this. Let's just say it's 600,000 worldwide. Okay, I only need 600,000. It's probably more than that. But you know, for easy math, let's say it's 1 million worldwide.
Yeah.
Who are AEW sickos.
Yeah.
Their YouTube channel should be tailored to them exactly. They should have a membership on YouTube, and they could charge $20. I reckon they could probably charge $30
easily
a month. And you give them access. You have a camera going backstage because, you know, hey, that's how we saw the CM Punk, you know, non fight with Jungle Jack Perry.
Jesus, what an embarrassment!
You know,
that was.
Just leave that. I would, you know, get their over mojos. You know, one of the things I loved, and the audience we had, and the culture we had on TNA is we're a club. We're over here having fun every Thursday, watching wrestling together. We're all wrestling nutcases, you know. Whenever oh shit, I'm blanking on his name. What's the Frankenstein character? PCO.
Yep.
So PCO, obviously, he was one of the Mounties back in the day.
Yep.
You know, so in the chat is like, you know, as Impact Wrestling, I'll go, I think I was arrested in Montreal by someone who looked just like him about 20 years ago. And everyone in the chat's like falling over because they all get the reference because it's an insider of an inside of an inside reference. Whenever there was a chop, you know, we had a woo emoji and like it would just be spammed. It was a way to say, hey, you might not have a best friend who will come over every Thursday, watch TNA, but we're here for you on YouTube. We're all here. We're all the one of the proudest things I ever achieved is the first 10 minutes of the show on YouTube when we were watching it on the Ultimate Insiders was people saying, "Hey Phil, hey Ant, hey Dave, hey Tina." You know, they were like friends. That they like, it was just like a relationship, and it was so cool. Of course, Ariel Sherner couldn't wait to get. Now he's in charge of it. Couldn't wait to cancel all that because so, you know, well done. It just like literally take your hardest of the hardcore fans, the people who supported it, even when TNA was pretty dross during the pandemic, early pandemic, when they didn't know what they were doing, how they're going to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
You take that something away from them that they've been enjoying for years. I mean, tremendous. Yeah. But yeah, there's no reason that AEW couldn't do that times a 1,000.
I know.
But I was weird. I was just, what mentioned names, I was just on a call with a guy who used to run AEW's social media. And he said that what happened was they do the top 5 moments of Dynamite. It's like people would bitch at him that they weren't number 1.
The wrestlers would.
The wrestlers would come up to him and say, "Hey, I saw you did your top 5. You had me at number 2. I should have been number 1. I was the biggest moment."
Oh my God!
Yeah,
dude.
and I was like,
cannot believe that.
I mean, the correct answer there is get over yourself.
Holy shit!
I do what's right for YouTube, and you were number 1 last week. You were number 1 next week. You're number 1 3 weeks ago. I mean, you can't do your best work under those circumstances, and that's a failure of management. That the talent shouldn't be going and essentially throwing their weight around with rank and file members of the staff. That should not be allowed to happen.
Could you imagine one of those WWE playlists like CM Punk's greatest moments, and then Punk goes, "Hey, Paul, I'm actually this should be number 1." Even a guy that level, that's just such like weird. From what I've heard, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, I'm getting told all this, but from what I've heard, the backstage of AEW is like kind of, it's a weirder culture where it's like a lot of people who just think the shit don't stink ultimately, and I don't want to just blanket put that on everyone, but you're just telling me that's another story to add to my list of like, are you serious? You know?
Yeah. So, I was talking about with the Good Brothers once. I was they're so awesome. So I was talking about it with Gallows once, and I was like, why is it like that? Because he was describing, not with AEW. I mean, I think he had like pretty positive experiences there, but he was talking about other locker rooms. I was like, that's so weird. I was like, that's just not, because I just come from the UFC. I was like, I've just been with the UFC for 12, 13 years. It's nothing like that. He goes, yeah. He goes, so the UFC, if you talk shit, you can go, all right, we'll come and spar then. All right, then let's fight. He goes, here, it's not that. It's a work. So no, everyone thinks they're the toughest guy. Everyone thinks they're the biggest star. Yeah. And there's no real way of saying you're not. You know? Yeah. I was like, that's when you have to get into like, well, I draw heat. Well, like, does he really draw? Now you're whispering like, yeah, he's only pulling reins because this, or you've got the non-stop whispering campaign. But yeah, I mean, look at what Cody Rhodes doing. And Cody Rhodes is like the hottest thing in the world right now, and the whispering campaign against someone that talented who was so obviously just a license to print money.
Oh my God!
And AEW had him in bored the will to live out of him in the mid card.
Exactly. When a guy like Cody jumped off the ship, like he saw the writing on the wall, way, way, way ahead of everybody else, and yeah, I mean, geez, and then you look now too. They got Ethan Page in NXT. They took him, and he's brilliant on the mic, and he's their champion in NXT. And it's like, dude, you guys fumbled. These are your guys, and you fumbled them. And Ethan.
You'd hope that an executive at Time Warner would have a conversation like, "Hey, you want this money and stuff, but I'm looking at WWE, and I'm looking at CM Punk, I'm looking at Cody Rhodes." I'm looking at their women's division. We give you this money. How are you going to keep talent? It just looks like you don't. You hope that's the kind of questions they're asking.
Yeah, but who knows if they actually are. So, Ant, what do you got going on in your life? Is there anything I could just talk to you for like days and days? Truly, I mean, we got so much.
I can come back.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome back here anytime. And I would love to have you back sometime. But why don't you let the good folks know like what you got going on? Do you have anything to plug, promote, just anything you want to throw out there to the universe?
Yeah, the Toonie guys always ask, and I was like, not really. I was like, I work with Conrad Thompson. I work with, Ariel Hawani. I work with.
Come on now, Ant. That's not very fair, Ant, to pigeonhole me like that and bring up me. Bring up
yeah, I mean, I work with some really cool guys, but I mean, if I got anything for the plug.
Okay, well, that's all right, man. Right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait to talk to you again, hopefully in the future, and we'll stay in touch. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, Ant Evans. Make sure you go and follow him, Ant Evans MMA. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.